You're watching once again a YouTube video presentation of the University of Wyoming Center on Aging. I'm Scott Veach. I'm your host, and on this program we'll be discussing topics of interest for caregivers of loved ones with dementia. We hope that you will subscribe to the channel and you'll hit that thumbs up like button. Both of those actions help the channel to grow and allow us to reach more people. And if you'll tap that notification bell, you'll be alerted each time we upload a new program. And now, this is Once Again. We welcome you to this third part of our discussion with Kent Shurtleff of Kinnear and Riverton, Wyoming. We're talking about what it's like being a husband caring for a wife with dementia. Thanks again. We're continuing the conversation. So in part one, we talked a little bit about our relationships. Part two, what it was like to get the diagnosis. So in this segment, I want to talk about a guy caring for his wife, because that's, I don't know if that's unusual, but it's unusual, I think, for guys to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're getting into.
I could never find anybody to talk about it.
That's key. Go ahead.
I could never find anybody to help me, and I tried locally in several different areas. Fremont County is a big county, so I had Lander and Riverton and Du Bois to talk to, and I couldn't find anybody. And
anybody who wanted to talk, or just anybody at all who was in your
I
shoes?
just couldn't find anybody. I was looking for a support group.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find that. And I happened to be in Casper, and a gal, a psychologist, I think, heard me talking to the doctor as we were leaving, and she understood that I couldn't find any support. Mm-hmm. And so she directed me to Wyoming Dementia Together.
Yeah.
And that's where you and I came together.
Right. Uh-huh.
And that's where I got some help to face some of the issues that I was facing. And that helped dramatically there.
For me, I think that there were several things that were so difficult to get used to as a caregiver. First of all, everything is life-changing. And like you said, there were no support groups. There were no... I couldn't find anybody who really knew what I was going through. And also, everything about being a caregiver for someone with dementia, it's all a moving target. You're always reacting. It's impossible to be proactive, to try and anticipate what the next thing is going to be going along. So you found Wyoming Dementia Together. And were you hooked right away? I mean, did you say, this is it? Was there a warm-up period? Or?
No, really, it was, I took to it right away, I think, because it was what I was looking for. Mm-hmm. They were answering some questions for me that I needed answered. I didn't realize that everybody with dementia is totally different.
Yeah.
Everybody is totally different. I didn't realize that some people with Alzheimer's get extremely angry. I mean, physically angry. Mm-hmm. Both women and men.
Right.
And I learned that. I didn't have to face that.
Yeah.
Some people did.
Yeah. That
I've been involved with now. Some people have had to be faced with that, but I wasn't. So I was pretty lucky from that perspective. But I did, you're one of the guys that, you were who I listened to be really honest with you. And the reason is because you were the guy who had experience. You and I visited about this a little bit about the military. We were, when I was in the military, when I went through boot camp, I was never active. I never saw any action, but when we were going through boot camp and AIT, we listened to the people who'd been to Vietnam. Mm-hmm. That's who we wanted to talk to. And when I got involved with Wyoming Dementia Together, that's why I listened so much to Scott, because you were there. You were ahead of me. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that you and I as husband caregivers, do you think we face anything differently than what wives face who are caring for husbands?
I wouldn't. I think if the role was switched in our family, my wife would have been way more detail oriented than I was. I wasn't. I didn't notice details. Maybe that's men. I don't know. But I didn't notice the details the way she would notice details. She started stopping things that didn't even dawn on me she was stopping, in terms of needlework and things that she did, and
Right. Yeah.
those kind of things. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
If that role would have been switched, she would have noticed that.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't.
Same thing, yeah. Mona was, she crocheted and did, and knitted, and she stopped doing that. She taught music, like I said, so she stopped playing the piano and the keyboard, and started withdrawing, and then I could notice that maybe she wasn't following along storylines on television, like she had. So there were all kinds of things like that. I asked the question about if there are differences for men and women caregivers. I think one thing that did help me, and I think generally helps men, is that physically we are usually bigger and stronger, and so it's just easier to help our wives. I mean, sometimes in support groups, you've got a 130-pound woman who's trying to care for a 250-pound guy, and that's there's that aspect of it too.
Yeah, I didn't face that issue so much because my wife was losing weight, and so she was pretty light.
Yeah.
And she was always a thin girl anyway, but she was losing weight. But I made a mistake one time, and you're going to make mistakes if you're a caregiver.
You bet.
She was sitting on the bed, and I was giving her medication. This was towards the end, but I was giving her medication, and I let loose of her to reach for her medication. I never should have done that, because even though she was sitting there, she wasn't stable.
Yeah.
And so just that little mishap, she fell off the bed and broke her collarbone.
Wow.
And I thought, what an idiot, I was to do that. But now when I look back, there's just things that that just happen to you, that you don't think about.
Have you ever thought about knowing what I know now, if I had to go back and do it over again, can you see some things you were glad you did, some things that you wish you might have done differently?
One thing may have been, once she was we put her in the hospice. She was in the hospice twice, like I said. Once we put her in there, and then brought her home, I may have done some things a little bit different, but I don't think hugely different.
Mm-hmm.
You try to deal with what's happening with you at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a lot of consistency in any way. In my case, there wasn't a lot of consistency in her the way she acted or reacted.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of a trick question, I think, because the old story that if the people who boarded the Titanic knew it was going to sink, they never would have left home that day.
Yeah.
And you can't go back and do that. I think that that if people ask me for advice, I think that we have to concentrate on the things that we can do, because there are so many things that we cannot do as caregivers. But for me, I think the first thing I did, that I'm so glad I did, was that I was able to secure power of attorney. And that made things so much easier because then I could make all of those decisions for her. So I think that that's one piece of advice that I personally would extend to every caregiver is being able to secure power of attorney makes the journey just so much easier. I think
we did the same.
Right. Yeah.
We did the same, and we actually, because of the way the law has changed and because of the way accounting has changed, we actually formed some irrevocable trusts.
Yes.
To help us, and I had learned in my business. I had learned a little bit about that, and so that's why we did that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether they still do that or not, but I mean, in our case, we needed to, and so we did. Yeah.
I think that as I look back over the whole scope of the 15 years that I was a caregiver, I think that one thing I would have done also is I think I would have gone easier on myself. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if, but looking back, now we can see it from a completed journey, and it's so difficult. It's almost impossible to see what you're in while you're in it.
Well, you're evolving during the time.
It's true.
You know, because it starts out pretty slow, and then there are certain issues that happen, and then it increases its intensity.
Mm-hmm.
Until you have to make the decision to get help.
Right.
And
Kent was actually part of a PBS documentary not too long ago about caregivers, and if we're able, maybe we can find that link and put it in the discussion box below. What was that like to have the PBS cameras come in and film you and interview you? Were you comfortable with that?
It happened so fast. I knew the gal who's head of PBS,
mm-hmm.
and so it happened so fast. I just didn't have a lot of time to think about it. But let me tell you, that media group who did it was very good.
Yeah.
That's one thing. They know what they were doing. Second thing, they came out to our place, you know, and used a lot of technology that I wasn't even
mm-hmm.
aware
How
of.
long were they with you? Was it one day? Uh-huh.
One day. But one thing I did do was I knew that my wife couldn't, at that point in her life, I knew that she couldn't take it. Mm-hmm. And so I called them my 5 angels, but they were her friends, and I had them come and get her that day so that she didn't have to perform, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, we have enough pictures, and with that program, she's really involved in it. But it's all through pictures. It's not through her sitting there talking to you, because she just couldn't do it.
Yeah. We talked about this before we began taping. We were both with our wives when they passed, mm-hmm. and I know that for me, it was great sadness, but at the same time, great relief that she wasn't trapped in that body anymore. She had finished her journey, and so I had some personal peace about that. What was it like for you?
Same. I mean, obviously, there was a lot of sadness there, but also I kind of felt guilty for saying, I can breathe now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Even though they were taking care of her in the hospice, mm-hmm. I'd still drive into the hospice 3 times a day from where I live. I mean, I was still, you don't let loose of that. And then once she did pass, then it was kind of like a lightning bolt. All of a sudden, things totally changed.
Yeah.
Totally changed.
Yeah.
That I was having to worry with, that I was having to. But she passed away in February, so it's been like 8 months, 7 months.
February of 24. Mm-hmm.
Yep, and but it's I'm still in the process of trying to accept that.
Mona passed December 10th of 21, and I remember she passed in early afternoon, and I remember that after we, my daughters were there with me, and after we took care of the arrangements with the mortuary and things like that, and I went home, and I was sitting in my front room, and all these emotions. First of all, it was peaceful. It was like, this is the first time in years that I don't have to be thinking about something. I don't have to wonder if this is taking place. I don't have to be concerned that maybe this isn't going the way that we wanted to, or what else. And it's a different experience. And but I was really, really glad that I was able to be with her, when she passed.
Oh, me too. Me too. Both my son, one of my sons who lives next door. He was with me, and we didn't. I don't think she knew us when she passed. It happened real quick. We got to town before she passed, but we got to say our goodbyes.
Yeah.
And that was worth every minute of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Has the whole experience of being a caregiver, has it changed you? And I say that because for me, I know that I think I learned a great deal about patience and perseverance and priorities. You learn what really is and is not important in life. I think that I learned a lot about resiliency, so many things. That's why I asked.
The word patience you hit.
Yeah.
That was the first thing.
Yeah.
I should have had a lot of patience because I never used much in my life. But you have to learn to do that, because as they change, as you move down that road and they start getting worse, this patient thing is hugely important.
Mm-hmm.
Then. So.
What kind of advice would you give for particularly for a man who's caring for his wife, or maybe caring for a parent or something like that? What would you say?
My biggest thing was I needed to find some help,
mm-hmm.
and it's out there. It's out there, and I didn't know that. I didn't know where to go. But it's out there, and just to be able to socialize and participate with people who are doing the same thing you're dealing with helped dramatically.
It's so important to know that you're not alone.
Oh man, it helps dramatically.
Yeah.
You said one time, one of the main things that I always tried to do was, and you are the one in that group who said this, and that is, it's called therapeutic fibbing. And we just never fibbed.
Yeah.
We never did.
Yeah.
We just never did. But there's a thing called therapeutic fibbing. And what your comment was, I needed to take Minnie back to get another evaluation. And that used to just scare her to death.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, well, the reason, Kent, you could get an evaluation is because of your insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And that made all of the sense in the world to her.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't really accurate.
Yeah.
But it made all the sense in the
mm-hmm.
world to her, and so it worked.
When we talk about therapeutic fibs, and I wish we could go on, we're going to wrap up here in a second, but when we talk about therapeutic fibs, we're talking about
living in their world rather than trying to have them live in ours. And so it comes down again, do you want to be right or do you want to have peace? And
help her.
And help her, yes.
I didn't want her to get this anxiety that she was
going to a doctor's appointment to figure out what's wrong. And yeah. And so we use things like therapeutic fibs to say, we got to go see the doctor for insurance purposes.
And she understood insurance,
like
and so that made sense to her, and so that worked.
Yeah, it's terrific. We could sit down here and talk for a long time about this, but I really appreciate your openness and your willingness to sit down and talk, and I think both of us share the goal of wanting to help others who are on the journey, and particularly men who are on that journey. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
I just want to let people know, because I know the struggle it took for me to find it.
Yeah.
And so
Kent Shurtleff has been our guest from the Kinnear Riverton area in Wyoming. Thank you, my friend.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you for being with us on this edition of Once Again.
You've been watching Once Again, a YouTube video presentation of the University of Wyoming Center on Aging. We hope, if you haven't done so already, that you'll subscribe to the channel and hit that thumbs up like button. Both of those actions help the channel to grow and allow us to reach more people. And if you'll tap that notification bell, you'll be alerted each time we upload a new video. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm Scott Veach. We'll see you again next time.